Well, welcome to Your Vote 2012, World Channel's exclusive preview of the South Carolina primary. I'm Philip Martin. The primary finally arrives after recent game-changing events, certainly more plot twists than a pulp novel. Joining us is Democratic political strategist Dorie Clark, who is a blogger for Forbes and the Huffington Post, and Garrett Quinn, radio host and blogger for Boston.com. But first, let's start with Anna Sale, reporter for our partner WNYC's itsafreecountry.org. Anna traveled to South Carolina to ask Republican voters what's on their minds.
How do you identify religiously?
Protestant.
I believe as a Christian that I should support someone who is most likely to reflect that, whose God is most likely to bless.
Do you have any reservations about Mitt Romney being Mormon?
I do, because I am a Christian, and so that is very important to me.
Mitt Romney is Mormon, and I've heard some voters voice concerns about that. Do you share that concern?
We share that concern.
Is Obama a Muslim? Is Obama from Africa? You know, did John McCain have an illegitimate black child 10 years ago? Yes, of course. That stuff plays a little bit better here than other places because we do have such an intellectually incurious electorate.
There are a lot of conservatives here. It's definitely a Republican state, mostly. Certain crowds you talk to, you got to talk their language. So the Bible, conservatism, you know.
White, black, green, it doesn't matter to me. I want someone, female, male, I don't care if they're Muslim or not. If they can do the job and they have some good ideas that they know how to put into action and they understand international politics, I'm all for it.
I'm sure during this election you're going to hear about a lot about how you're not better off than you were 3 years ago, and I don't think my family is, or a lot of people in the state are, or in the country.
I went to hear Mitt Romney speak, and I went to hear Jon Huntsman speak. I actually enjoyed hearing Jon Huntsman. I listened to Mitt Romney. I didn't really feel like he said anything at all.
There really wasn't a good consensus of what he stood for or what any of the candidates really stood for, other than attacking each other and attacking President Obama.
We're looking at an unemployment rate that's still above 8%, 35 months after the stimulus, which was supposed to keep the unemployment rate below 8%. And that's a critical number for a lot of people who are like, wait a minute, you promised us, a better economy. You just didn't deliver on it.
If he's going to beat Obama, I will vote for him.
And that's what you're looking for in this debate tonight?
I'm looking for someone who's going to beat Obama.
Now, Anna, you've been to Iowa, you've been to New Hampshire, you've covered all of these primaries. What's the mood like in South Carolina?
In South Carolina, very different from New Hampshire and Iowa, and what it comes from, I believe, is this absolutely visceral desire to defeat Barack Obama. And so where there were a lot of independents in New Hampshire looking at, the policies, and you had town hall meetings, people asking about European debt, and that sort of thing, in South Carolina, the conversation was about who can defeat Barack Obama and who reflects my values. I heard a lot more from social conservative voters about religion, about trying to make sure that their candidate was the candidate that was going to vote their values. And so I actually didn't run into that many folks who were enthusiastically behind Mitt Romney. That was similar in New Hampshire. People who decided to support Mitt Romney weren't totally enthusiastic about it, but I heard a lot of other folks were talking about Rick Perry, Newt Gingrich, Rick Santorum. The Ron Paul factor was not present at all in South Carolina and the voters I talked to, but a real passion for getting Barack Obama out of the White House. This is, after all, the first very red state that we're having a primary in.
Anna, thank you. Now, let me just start our guests for a second. Garrett, given what we just heard from Anna, which do you think would be which remaining candidates? We now have four. Which had the best week this week? And which had the worst?
Well, I would say Newt Gingrich until that ABC program aired, but he's clearly taken up. Rick Perry dropping out helps him cancel out the Huntsman endorsement, and also the guy's surgeon, and he just kills it in the debates. He knows how to push all the right red state buttons. Whether that's going to sustain him long term, I don't know, but it's a real possibility he could win South Carolina.
So you're saying that Gingrich, given all that's happened this week, had the best week?
Well, yeah. I mean, other than Rick Santorum, certainly he got the big endorsement from Dobson, from a Focus on the Family, but it's not reflecting in the polls. That's for sure.
And Dorie, what do you think?
I agree. I think that despite the ex-wife's allegations that Newt Gingrich demanded an open marriage, he's still by far had the best week. He's surging in South Carolina. He's done the seemingly impossible, which is come back from his plummet in Iowa, where Mitt Romney's allies were attacking him and driving down his numbers. And he also managed to get the Perry endorsement, which was critical.
Well, you know, this is amazing. Who would have thought that we would be talking about Newt Gingrich in this context like this on this particular day? But let me just ask this question. Given what you just said, might Romney not be the nominee?
I find it very difficult to see a scenario where that happens. Ron Paul's the only other guy in the race who has a competent organization, who's got fundraising capability, and who also has the supporters to go all the way to the convention, other than Mitt Romney. Newt Gingrich, Rick Santorum have both stumbled in getting on the ballot in various states. They also haven't structured themselves for a national campaign the way Ron Paul has, the way Mitt Romney has. So, is it a possibility? Sure, crazy things have happened, but at this point, I don't see it. I see maybe the primary goes a little longer, but I don't really see a way that Newt Gingrich, having missed the ballot in key states, or same goes for Rick Santorum, being able to knock off Mitt Romney.
And Dory, what do you think?
I think Romney's inevitable. He has worked very hard since 2008. He's become a better candidate. He's solid on the stump. And I think that a crucial moment happened in the past week where a gathering of conservative evangelical pastors got together, and there was momentum to try to coalesce behind an alternative to Romney. It didn't work. 75% of them were backing Santorum. Santorum's numbers have not moved. I think he's my nominee for worst week.
In fact, you know, we just got some numbers in where 32%, according to Clemson poll, are now supporting Newt Gingrich, and you have 20-something. I think the figure is 26%, if I'm not mistaken. 11%. That's 26% for Romney. 11% for Paul, and Santorum bringing up the rear at 9%. Does that surprise you?
No, I think it reflects the polling data we've seen from pretty much every other outlet that's been making phone calls in that area and been in the field. All the polls are indicating that Newt Gingrich is rising. In some cases, he's surging. Santorum is certainly fading away. I'm not surprised that Ron Paul's generally kept steady between 15 and 10%. That's sort of where he plateaued. That's sort of his range at this point, at least in South Carolina. But again, Newt Gingrich has run an unorthodox campaign in the state, and he has relied heavily on his presence in debates, and that's really all he has going for him. He doesn't have the operation. He doesn't have anything else. He needs these debates. And remember, there are only 2 more debates after South Carolina. There's 2 in Florida, and then there's not another one until February. I mean, late February.
Okay, well, let's go down to South Carolina and see exactly what is happening on the ground. Joining us from South Carolina, we have Ben Howell, who is a blogger and radio host. Ben, we've spoke to you in the past, and we're also talking to Brad Worthen. He's a blogger and former longtime editorial page director of The State, which is the largest newspaper in South Carolina. Brad, this question to you. Now, your voters like to flirt with hardliners. That's what we know about South Carolina. But yet they vote, in the final analysis, they vote for moderates.
Right.
Is that going to happen this time?
Well, you know, they usually do flirt with the hardliners, and they've been doing that all year. Starting back in August when Rick Perry first got into the race, he was topping the polls in South Carolina. Then it was Herman Cain, which I guess you can call, I don't know if it's hardliner, it's more like fringe. And then it was Gingrich. Then over the last month or so, they started to do what they usually do, which is go with the establishment guy, the guy whose turn it is. And that's what, up till a week ago, I would have told you was going to happen. Now it looks like not only are they flirting with the hardline candidate, they're going to run off with him.
Now, Ben, look, last time we spoke to you, good buddy, you were talking about voting for, you weren't sure you were going to vote for, you were undecided. Who have you opted for at this point?
Like many people who were flirting with a Perry campaign for a long time, I'm moving over to Gingrich. I think a lot of people that are the anti-Romney candidate, looking for the anti-Romney candidate are going to move to Gingrich. Even Santorum's voters, or people who are supporting Santorum at this point, by a margin of 45% of Santorum's supporters have said that they could still switch and would be willing to switch, and if they did, it would be to Gingrich. So with the week that he's had, I think that I'm not going to be a fringe in that way. I think a lot of people are going to go that way.
Now, how was Gingrich's comments about blacks and food stamps and the open marriage allegations from his ex-wife playing to the South Carolina electorate?
You know, I think that he did very well, actually. He was very angry, or appeared very angry in the debate, but inside, I've got to believe he was thankful that the question was asked, because if there's one thing Gingrich is good at, it is blasting the media. And for a lot of the base, the media is as culpable as Barack Obama. So to blast them on stage as effectively and completely as he did, I think it played very well for him. Within 5 minutes, there were a lot of people that I know feeling like he pretty much won the debate at that moment. It's done very well, and I don't think that the allegations, which, you know, this is not really new. We knew he had this affair. We knew he had left his wife in the 90s. Her allegations about his ego and, you know, this is old news. So I don't think it's going to go very far, and I don't think people care.
Well, let me just break in for just a second, Ben, and ask Brad. Now, as a veteran of these primaries, what should we be watching for on Saturday?
Well, how do you mean? In terms of the result, or
in terms of signs, if you will, in terms of who do you think is going to win this all out?
I think it's going to be Gingrich. You know, it's not just people who supported Rick Perry. We're seeing prominent people who supported Huntsman up to a week ago breaking for Gingrich. It seems to be across the board. I mean, Richard Quinn, who's a very respected political consultant here in South Carolina, he was working for the Huntsman campaign. He's going for Gingrich. Bob McAllister, who is as establishment Republican as you get. He was chief of staff to Carol Campbell back in the late 80s, early 90s. He, at the last minute, is breaking for Gingrich. It's just, you know, one after another person like that, all sorts of business leaders. And, you know, these people have been hanging back because there was just something missing with Romney, and they did not want to settle. They didn't want to say, okay, we give up.
Well, this brings up an important question. Did the endorsements by Governor Nikki Haley of Romney make a difference? And does Sarah Palin's endorsement, if you will, she said if she lived in South Carolina, she would vote for Newt Gingrich. Does that make a difference? Has it helped or hindered or not made much of a difference?
Well, the Haley endorsement has not made a difference, except to her. She's had a great time, you know, sort of preening in the national spotlight because she loves that. But, you know, there was a poll a week or so ago, actually less than that. Time's kind of compressed right now. There was a poll a couple of days ago that came out that showed that among the people who had decided they were going with Romney, who knew that she was endorsing him, a larger number of people said that that was actually a negative in their decision-making process than said it was a positive.
Well, Ben, how did that play for you? Did the endorsements make a difference?
Only in that it laid out where people's allegiances were going to be lying in the next few weeks. You know, everybody makes friends when this is all over, but it's pretty cutthroat in the meantime. I got a chance to talk to Governor Haley on Monday. She's very, very much into the idea of having a businessman taking over the role of the president. That seems to be her number one reason. There are a lot of people who question the decision. I question the decision to endorse when this is such a key state, and you know, third state in the primaries, first in the South. And she's a brand new governor. It just seems like it might have been a good time to step back and let South Carolina decide on their own.
Okay, Ben, thank you very much. And Brad, thank you as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, let me ask you this question. Looking ahead I mean, we've just talked about this open marriage question, which was revealed on Nightline by Newt Gingrich's ex-wife. Any impact in your view, Dory? I mean, is this going to affect Newt Gingrich in the road ahead?
I think a bit. As Ben was saying earlier, this isn't new information. We've known for a long time about Marianne's allegations and dissatisfaction with Newt, the fact that he had an affair with his current wife, the fact that he had an affair even during his first marriage. He's now on his third marriage. So I think that when it comes down to it, values voters are going to look at him and they may say, for the time being, he's better than Romney. We want to send a message to Romney. But ultimately, they are not going to be satisfied with Newt Gingrich.
Now, Garrett, the same question. I mean, why hasn't this resonated in South Carolina the way some thought it might?
I think there is a real panic right now among conservatives, particularly anti-Romney people, about unifying behind anybody who could possibly stop Mitt Romney's march to the nomination. And even if it's a guy who has questionable credentials for social conservatives, unlike somebody like Rick Santorum, who is, who originally was really running as the token social conservative in the race, they need to get behind somebody. So I think they're willing to tolerate his mistakes.
Okay, let's turn
to shortcomings, really.
Gotcha. Well, Anna, let's talk about this in the context of what you experienced in South Carolina. This question about the open marriage, as Dory pointed out, and as Garrett has pointed out, it's not a new issue, but how is it resonating in South Carolina, given that it's resurged in a rather unusual way, with the revelation coming directly from his ex-wife on Nightline?
Well, you know what I thought about when I heard the revelations was, after talking to voters in South Carolina throughout the week, I thought, I bet Rick Perry might just be a little bit regretful that he got out of the race in the morning instead of waiting till Thursday evening after these revelations had started sprinkling out in the press, because I think he would have been positioned to, be that values candidate who is Protestant, to say, I've got a strong family, vote for me, but he's not in the race. And so what I think is interesting is when I talk to voters about Newt Gingrich, people readily said, he's got baggage. I know he's got baggage, but I love the fight. It's the combativeness that people were responding to. Sure, he's from the South, but it's that fight. And so I think that in a state where folks really want Barack Obama to lose, where Mitt Romney comes off as a little bit milquetoast, as somebody that's not their kind of fighter. And so that's what I think Newt Gingrich has really, that's why these two debates were so pivotal for him this week. And his response to that question in the debate to John King, he just turned it exactly to his advantage, saying, I can't believe you're asking me this question. And I think he made that moment, totally used it to his advantage. And so, of course, we don't know exactly what the polls have done, what folks are thinking on the ground since these revelations have been, it's just been about 24 hours.
Well, but let's see, Anna, let's see how this plays in the weeks ahead. Anna, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, let's head to Florida, where we're looking ahead to seeing what's going on in the next few weeks. We'd like to welcome Carlos Harrison. He's in Miami. He's a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist and editor who, among his many credits, writes about politics for the Huffington Post, Latino Voices. Carlos, now until recently, Romney has topped the polls in your state. How will this week impact Florida in your view?
Well, I think he's still playing out. I agree with Ann on a lot of fronts there of what's happening. I think Mitt Romney, that idea of milquetoast, I think he really wants to come out, and he appears in the debate to be playing at a game of fisticuffs. He wants the Queen's rules. And Newt Gingrich is coming out there and kidney punching. He knows how to street fight. And I think that plays very, very well in South Carolina. We've got to remember, Gingrich is from Georgia. He knows how to play to the South. But Florida is not the South. The part of Florida that's the South is where they'll have the debate on Thursday, if everyone shows up. It's up in Jacksonville. Once you get down out of there, you're dealing with a very diverse state that is very northern in some parts, very Latin in other parts. Romney gets an advantage from the Cuban Americans here, because I spoke to a pollster, an analyst the other day, who said, the Cuban Americans tend to vote for the mainstream candidate. They supported McCain, they supported George.
Let me ask you this, since we're getting a few more questions in and we're running short on time. What issues, therefore, resonate in Florida? Well, in Florida overall, you got to be careful with the sense that you're coming across as anti-immigrant, i.e. anti-Hispanic. This is a very important part of the vote here.
And you got to be careful. Even if people don't line up on the immigration issue because it doesn't affect them, as they say, Puerto Ricans or Cubans, the Cuban Americans. But the fact is, a lot of us have friends or family who are Colombians, Venezuelans, Mexicans. It's a real mix here. And if you come across as looking like you're negative, that could be a bad thing.
Well,
Gingrich,
immigration period is not a GOP-friendly issue. So I guess the question is, who will the Latino vote go to in this primary?
In the primary, your primary Hispanic Republican audience is going to be the Cuban American. Again, with them, the immigration thing may not be as big a deal. I'd play it careful. It's going to be tough to tell. The polls are showing Romney ahead. A week ago, I would have said Mitt Romney had it sewed up and he really was unstoppable. But, you know, Newt Gingrich knows his ground game and he knows how to do stuff. And he also knows Miami. And they're going to like him because he was the guy who took Bill Clinton out for impeachment, even if it was over an affair. So that's going to play well with them, and they're going to remember that. They do remember well, and they hold grudges. You can just ask Fidel Castro about that.
So, Carlos, it's been 4 years since Obama won Florida. What does the political landscape look like at this point for Obama/Romney, if that's the case?
Well, the fact is that Florida is still very much a purple state. It's so evenly split. As a matter of fact, just the other day, the Republican Party of Florida was crowing about the fact that they had narrowed the gap, that they were now just within 4 points overall in total numbers of voter registration, trailing the Democrats. So the real thing here is going to be, it's going to be those independent voters. Who are a lot of the independent voters? Hispanic, Puerto Rican, younger Cuban Americans. That's the audience that you really got to play to here. And the fact is, we've been listening to the whole primary race. We know what people have said, and we know what they've said in both languages. So people are more aware than they know. And I'd say it may play for Obama down here.
Okay. Well, Carlos, you threw it back to the future. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Well, look, Garrett, what happens in the general election in your view? I mean, we have many months ahead, obviously, till November. But given what you're seeing right now, how do you think this is playing out for either Mitt Romney, if he indeed is the nominee, or Obama?
Well, like in any general election, particularly in a national general election, it's a race to the middle. And Romney's positioned himself in that manner as he's, clearly, as Gingrich trashes him as the Massachusetts moderate. But I think the key issue coming out of this race is going to be about the economy. The economy is much worse off than it was 4 years ago, but you're going to see something we didn't see 4 years ago. You're going to see the super PACs, the third party organizations who are going to drastically change the landscape, I think, in this debate.
Well, let's get Dorian here also in that regard. What does it look like? Do you agree with Garrett?
I do to a certain extent. I think in terms of the primary coming up in Florida, what I expect is that that's where Romney is going to definitively clinch it. I think that Gingrich may do well in South Carolina, but Romney is the one with the money, and ultimately that is usually the deciding factor. Florida is a huge state, and I think he can beat back opposition then. In the fall against Obama, I think that because of Florida's economic woes, there's going to be a clear line of attack against Romney, the businessman who has been preying on people, et cetera. I think that if Romney were to pick Marco Rubio, the Florida senator, as his running mate, he would do well in Florida. Otherwise, I give a slight nod to Obama.
Okay, well, but think about all the issues still hovering, 15%, Cayman Islands. How will those things play, this new revelation?
I think there is one thing I think we got to keep in mind here is I think Ron Paul could play a significant factor in being a nuisance to Mitt Romney. Not so that he's a threat to Mitt Romney, but he could really cause him headaches down the road, especially if the other candidates do drop out, if Newt Gingrich, if Rick Santorum drop out, because he can maintain a long-term operation and continue to just pick and poke at Mitt Romney as things go on.
Okay, Garrett. Well, I think that's all the time we have. That's it for sure. Look, be sure to follow the primary results on itsafreecountry.org and stay tuned for election coverage from PBS's NewsHour. We'll be back on the 31st for results of the Florida primary. I'd like to thank our guest in studio and on Skype for a great conversation. And I'm Philip Martin. Thanks for joining us.